Please welcome to the stage SCORE Vice President of Advocacy and Communications, Nicole Floyd-Smith.
I don't know about you all. Can you hear me? Yeah, there we go. I don't know about you all, but I learned so much in that opening panel. And based on what I know about the agenda, the inspiration is only beginning. It's now my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker for today, Amanda Bickerstaff, to continue the conversation. A former high school biology teacher, Amanda Bickerstaff is the founder and CEO of AI for Education, an organization that helps educators, schools, and districts expertly navigate AI technology, empowering teachers, and ultimately improving student outcomes. Amanda will share lessons learned from working with educators across the country and offer practical guidance for leading AI implementation with clarity and intention. Please join me in welcoming Amanda Bickerstaff to the stage.
Good morning, everyone. How are we today? Oh, I'm Southern. We can do better than that. Good morning. Thank you. I'm Amanda. I'm the CEO and co-founder of AI for Education. We're an organization that has been doing AI literacy and responsible adoption around the country and world since April 2023. So recently I was called a grandmother of AI literacy, which I think is very funny. But one of the things I wanted to do in this keynote is something a little untraditional. Instead of doing kind of a talk, I want to give as many tips and tricks and strategies as I can. And I know that we have a really diverse group here. And so I would say that if you're a school leader or a practitioner, there's a lot for you to take home right now. But also if you're a policymaker or a support organization, there's a lot of need today for support. And so I want to start with just some data. If you know our work at all, you know we love a piece of evidence. And so when we think about what's happening today, I want to start with that top level stat of that 85% of young people are using generative AI for schoolwork. And I want to be clear here, this is not our high school students. This is a Common Sense Media report that came out this year. It's a nationally representative sample. And what we find is that if you look at that top bar, 9 to 12, 13 to 15, and 16 to 17, is that students are absorbing this technology first and primarily as entertainment. This is coming to them from Roblox. Meta has the avatars like Kylie Jenner, et cetera. But we do see, though, is that when you think about when we work with a lot of districts or policymakers, they're like, oh, we have time for K-5. We don't have time for K-5. It's happening everywhere. But I want you to notice just how much schoolwork is being disrupted by generative AI. And so when we see this, you have 74% of the youngest, but it really starts to ramp up. And actually we see this pretty representative. If you're working in higher education, it kind of ramps up at the older that you get. But then Babak and others were talking about AI companionship, getting advice about my body, practicing conversation social skills, getting advice on future decisions, and discussing your feelings or personal problems. And what we see is that green, that dark green, is every day. And so when we think about the impact of the work that we do, we cannot deny that this rival technology is impacting our youngest people, our most vulnerable people, every single day. But we also know that we have a lot of lagging policies and supports. And so I would say that from a representative sample of what we do, we think that policy identification of around 50% to be overstated. The majority of districts do not have formal policies specifically about generative AI, and even less have guidelines about responsible use. But I do think that if you've ever been a school leader or in a school, the 6% of teachers that say that those policies are clear is a perfect example of where we often get things wrong around change management. And so when we think about the work that we're doing, those types of policies often create a sense of safety and to even take risks. And that tends to be missing right now. We also see familiar inequities. Lower poverty districts have more access to tooling, to AI literacy work. Families are more have that access at home. Students are using different types of tools, if at all. And the final piece, and I think this is so important, is that no matter what happens, you might have heard how New York City is thinking about doing a 2-year moratorium on AI tools in the schools, is that the pressure is coming from industry. We have, right now, has anybody heard of token maxing? Where a lot of Accenture, McKinsey, Thrive Global are all starting to tie compensation to how much AI you use. And I just want to be clear, not how quality matters, but how much AI. And what we see is that AI literacy was a top rising skill on LinkedIn in 2025. And then this year, it's AI operations and strategy. So we're having this really significant kind of disconnect that's happening between where our students are experiencing AI and even our schools being disrupted, and then what the world is telling us is going to be important, not in 10 years, but today. And so other pieces of evidence that I think are important is that we do know that student AI literacy is falling behind. So I'm a former teacher, everybody, so I do like a little bit of participation. So if you can raise your hand if you're a school leader, if you've done teacher AI literacy in your organization. Okay. And I would take a look around. And then keep your hand raised or raise it if you've done student AI literacy. And I want to just kind of notice that we have a pretty mixed group here. So we have some organizations doing both, some doing only one, and others not doing anything at this stage. And what we see is that this is a thing, and if this doesn't stop you in your tracks, I don't know what else I can say today, is that this is another report that was done that looks at 15 to 18-year-olds, and who is most responsible about teaching you about AI? And the number one is myself. Then my peers. Then we have my school at 16%. And then Gen AI itself, because you know what? You want your 7-year-old going to ChatGPT and say, like, teach me how to use you. Gen AI, we have the tech companies who are incentivized for these tools to be used, then parents and caregivers, experts in the government. And so let's think back to that Common Sense Media report of 85% of young people using this for schoolwork. They asked those same students, do you know that generative AI does not know right from wrong? And only 37% said yes. And so what we have is this enormous disconnect of what's happening. These tools are flooding the zone, and they're being used, and often in some cases, some schools are bringing this in where school AI or magic school student is being used in 2nd grade, in kindergarten, and 3rd grade. And what we see is that there's a real disconnect here. And what we really also see is that even though teachers are getting AI literacy, it's the one and done approach. And we did a great little AI literacy training at a vocational school district. And I met a new superintendent they had a year later. She's like, I'd really love you to come back in, but my staff are saying, we already did one. We're fine. And so what we see is that AI is moving so quickly and is so disruptive that the idea of the one and done, which we know does not work for just about anything, is definitely not fit for purpose today. And so the last piece that I want to do before we kind of go into the practical component is that we have had this slide for 3 years, which is wild. And so this slide, the only difference is there's like a box around it now, everybody, in terms of where we see this happening mostly. And so what we see is that there are still banning actions happening, whether for students, for staff, or both. We see that there's a wait and see. Oh, we're going to wait until there's guidance from Tennessee or another state, or we're looking to other organizations. Or maybe we're just really busy. There's a lot of headwinds right now. Techlash is happening. And then we also see self-guided, where maybe we've done 1 or 2 PDs, maybe there's like a couple tools open. And what's really interesting is that you might think, okay, self-guided is gonna have the best opportunity out of those 3 to work. But we actually find when we walk into a district that it feels the exact same to us. There is fear and uncertainty, there's fragmentation, there is a lack of clarity of what is actually going to be responsible. And what we see is escalating usage by students and some teachers. And then you see lockdowns. I was in a district yesterday. It's been a start of school. So I was in this week, Chelmsford, Massachusetts. Yesterday, I was in Great Valley, Pennsylvania. My team is in Iowa today. It's kind of a crazy world. And yesterday I was in a district, and all of the ELA teachers, we had to stop our training to have like an hour conversation about academic integrity. All that team wanted before I came in to do that AI literacy work with them was a lockdown browser. That's it. It'll fix it. We're just gonna remove the technology. And so what we see is that this is something that's happening, and I would say the majority of districts. I would say probably from our perspective, 75 to 80% of districts are somewhere in these first 3 buckets. And so for us, the work that we do and some of the work that's happening in this room are moving towards organization-wide approaches. And what we would consider to be organization-wide is something that we believe very strongly, if even more strongly today. And the first is community-wide AI literacy. And here's the thing, everybody. I have been wrong about one thing continuously in the last 3.5 years, and that is how long it would take for AI literacy to become a national priority. It is just not happening. In fact, if you look at funders and foundations, there's a lot of tools being developed, and like, we're going to throw a tool in, we're going to find out. And some of that can be really great, and some of the work is really, really amazing. But there's almost we never hear from a foundation saying, hey, AI for education, how can we build AI literacy within a school, a district, a state, which I think is pretty remarkable. These tools are designed to make you think they're easy and authoritative and reliable, and even caring in some cases. And guess what? These tools are none of those things. They are not pedagogical, they are not empathetic, they are not reliable. And what we have is, like, unless you start to really understand that, it's almost impossible to use these tools with safety in mind. We also know that guidelines need to be there. We need a 1-2 kind of approach where we're building that AI literacy and that knowledge and that comfort of being able to make informed decisions. But we also need guardrails around people just knowing what's in and out of bounds. We know that is like, I feel like it's like the shrug emoji, where if you just like bring it down the temperature a little bit and people can start having meaningful discussions about what really needs to happen. And the last thing is, I cannot tell you how many times a district has come to us and said, we started with a tool first, and we figured out that was not the way to go. Whether it was because the tool wasn't used very well, that there was a backlash, that some students and teachers were pretty uncomfortable, or harm actually happened. So what we would suggest instead is flipping the case into, instead of adopting a tool, let's adopt a piloting mindset. So identify an actual problem, a practice, and then find a solution in a meaningful and metric-driven way. I'm going to tell you right now, it's a really good way to spend a lot of money quickly. These tools are quite expensive because of how generative AI works. But what we suggest is have a little bit of an arms race. Right now it's a little bit hard out there. Have 2 or 3 different types of tools come in, build like a pilot, look at efficacy, and then also build AI literacy around those tools before you're going to supplement, like actually implement them across an entire district. And so when we think about our roadmap, and I will say, if you would like to, this is all the resources in this presentation are going to be at this QR code and bit.ly link. We are also really happy to share the resources with you. But for us, what we believe works is kind of a change management. I mean, it's not going to be surprising to those of you in here doing this work. What we find that really matters is the first thing to do is create a team and gather evidence. I'm going to tell you right now, if you can start talking to young people, doing focus groups, talking to teachers, it's going to blow your mind. Students, we have never done a student focus group where they have not identified that they know that generative AI is going to cause harm to their learning if they can't figure out a better way. But they also tell you in the same breath, it's really easy, and we're going to keep doing it until someone tells us a better way. We also see that students are really aware of like how their teachers are using it or thinking about it. And then I would say it's really interesting. You either have districts in which the teachers are more bullish or the students are more bullish, but almost never is it the same. We also know that creating a team allows for, there was a really great leadership conversation before this. We do believe that this has to be a cabinet level decision. You have to create time, space, money for this. But creating a team allows you to distribute the work that you need to do to keep up, to understand, to build capacity, and then also to build people that become advocates for this very difficult, complex time. The second thing that we see is to align on vision and implementation. Generative AI cannot be another thing. It has to be something that actually serves the mission and vision of the organization within which you're working. We know if you make it another thing, it's the first thing will be ignored. And right now it's pretty noisy, and so it's not going to help at all if it's something that's going to be sitting over here. We then suggest very strongly that having an AI literacy plan that is for everyone, and I'll talk about what we believe AI literacy looks like, and then finally developing guidelines. And so I want to give an example. So I always think it's great to give an example of a district. So we've worked with hundreds of districts. I'm going to use Charleston as an example. So Charleston, we started working with last November. They're in a state that does not have state level guidance. There are 90 schools across suburban, urban, and rural. The CFO was tasked to figure out a policy. It's kind of funny, right? It starts with the CFO, and they brought us in, and we could have just written a policy, but instead what we asked is, like, can we get a group of stakeholders in a room and actually have them navigate this together? And what was really cool about this is the Deputy Superintendent Luke, who you'll see in a moment, went to his email inbox, and he literally emailed everyone that had ever emailed him, good or bad, about AI in the district. So talk about brave. And we had, in November of last year, they all came into a room, we had up 35 people, and we had like the best day. They were so engaged, and in fact, we've met with them now 3 times. This diverse group of stakeholders, from leaders to teachers, students, family members, researchers, industry, all in that room. We wrote a board level policy, and then now AI adoption, AI literacy is the core. But I want to focus on what we have here, is that if you're going to be thinking about this, it's a very simple Venn diagram, but what we find to be so impactful is taking the time to take a step back and identifying where generative AI can actually serve the work you're already doing. And so in the case of Charleston, they're really focused on starting to build capacity just across the district in general around empowerment and human judgment. And so everything that they have done, even the policy where human judgment is centered in a board level policy around decision making with generative AI. We can see, I'm going to show you 2 more examples. We co-wrote the guidance for Chicago Public Schools and Houston ISD. And one of the things that's really interesting is that they're both pretty different. Houston's really focused on future-ready students. Chicago's really focused on high-quality instructional materials. And so when they think about building this in, they're not doing everything. They're focusing on those 2 areas. And then it's supplemented all the way through all their training, their guidelines, and the implementation that they're doing. And I think that that can be really helpful. A lot of times we'll hear from a principal, no one's using the tools, they don't know what to do. And I was like, how are you giving it to people? And we're just giving them this carte blanche to use it. And you're like, well, have you picked maybe 1 or 2 high quality, impact driven problems of practice to work on? You probably will have a better chance of that working, because it's easier to kind of land and expand than to go really big where people already feel like this is probably too big to wrap my hands around. So what I want to do is I want to show you a video from our last AI committee meeting in Charleston. And it's just going to be, we brought everyone together. We'll talk about our C framework of AI literacy. So we did a half day together, and this is a video that was created.
We commissioned a stakeholder group of individuals to begin an AI steering committee, to begin a conversation, to really build our background knowledge on what artificial intelligence is, and to engage in a conversation about this integration.
And being part of this committee has really helped me guide those students through creating curriculum that integrates both the content that they need to learn in my science classes along with those AI literacy skills.
What I was impressed about was the makeup of the committee. It had educators from the district, it had parents and students. Charleston County is taking a very incremental process in terms of AI utilization, making sure that it's tied to its values.
I wanted to join the AI committee because I see the misuse of AI in the classrooms, and it's something that's extremely concerning.
There's a lot of different viewpoints in the group, which I find to be a very positive thing. AI can be infinitely positive and infinitely negative at the same time. So I think it's really important that you have multiple viewpoints coming to the table to try to come to solutions.
I have learned that many more people are excited about AI than we realize. Most kids are using it, most adults are using it, and we need to teach AI literacy so that we're using it correctly.
I just think it's been a really great committee, and I really have enjoyed hearing all these different perspectives, getting to know a lot of different people in the school from different parents, administrators, and teachers, and working as a team, I think is a really good way. It takes a lot of voices to build this village so that we can make AI effective for our community.
So a couple of little back of the envelope type of stuff that not everyone would know is that the student and parent in this video came into this AI committee a little bit late and were ready for a fight. The student was an artist. The Charleston had create a pamphlet award, like it was a contest, and the person that won used AI. And so she went to the board and was pretty upset. And so they came in having no context and pretty ready for that kind of big fight. And it took like an hour of sitting and listening and talking to get them on a video espousing the positive parts of using generative AI and doing this in a way that was really responsible. Also in the video, you'll see the last parent is a professor at Clemson and computer science, able to bring that in, someone that like has such a beautiful industry connection, but also has kids in the district. But I also want to point out Julianne. Julianne was the #1 critic of Charleston's approach to AI before she was in this AI committee. And instead of it becoming something that could have actually become quite negative, she's now brought in and she's the biggest advocate for the work. And so I think that there's so many opportunities by building coalition, by giving people a place. But I will say every time we meet, it's not about talking about AI. We're learning together. We're making decisions. We're listening to data. We're looking at data. We're building consensus. And I think that that is really what we see work the best. And for us, if you're interested, if you saw the papers that were out, we've actually released our own Gen AI literacy framework. It is, there's a lot of AI literacy frameworks out there, but ours is specific for generative AI, which is what most people think when they think AI. They think ChatGPT. And so what we have is that we focus our work on 3 components of safe, ethical, and effective use. And so a lot of our work, though, stems from the fact is that people need to know how these tools work first, to build a critical distrust, to identify how to make informed decisions. And those informed decisions should lead to safe, ethical, and effective practice. And that for us, it's pretty simple. I like the idea that frameworks aren't perfect, but they can be useful, is that we're finding districts, including Nashville, who are here, Metro Nashville. I don't know if you guys are here. Yay, there they are. I see you a lot on Zoom, but are actually taking this full sail and starting to adopt it because it's something that everyone can get behind, which is really nice. So I want to end the conversation with a couple of examples because AI literacy is, in my mind, the foundation for everything. Is that one of the ways to look at this is from a district of size, but we see this happening in districts around the country that we're working with, is first of all, adopting a framework. In this case, they're adopting our C framework. And then what they did is we built foundational AI literacy at all levels of leadership first. So district cabinet, school instructional coaches, principals, assistant principals first, and then started to train the teachers in a summer symposium, which got, by the way, it was kind of crazy. We were on the news like 4 times. They were like AI literacy on the front page of the Post and Courier because it was such a positive way of framing it. And then in the fall, teachers will have a mandatory AI literacy course before they can use any Gen AI tools at the district level. And then that will feed into other elective courses around ethics, around instructional planning, and around student AI literacy with a focus on cognitive preservation. So think about the opposite of cognitive offload, which is what we want to have happen. And then all of the students in the district will have an AI literacy training by the end of the 2026 school year. Talk about crazy and wild, right? We're in this process right now. We're really excited about being able to share the results. This is going to be, at least for our perspective, one of the largest initiatives focused on AI literacy in any district in the country. And it's pretty exciting. I want to leave, though, with a couple of pieces that you can look at if you're really thinking about what this can look like in your own organization. If you're policymakers, we would suggest that today is not policies or guidelines. It's an and, not an or. We would suggest policies for really about compliance and safety, but also setting out a space for the guidelines to have some teeth, meaning that it's something that a lot of the good work can happen in the guidelines. We don't write a set of guidelines today without including digital well-being. We don't write a set of guidelines without things like cyberbullying and deepfakes around age-appropriate Gen AI usage. That's all part and parcel of what we do, not just around academic integrity, which is by far the biggest concern today, but we talk about first and second order effects. There's a lot more happening even when academic integrity violations occur. So we have a couple of examples. So if you're interested in seeing what's happening around the country, we have an AI state policy tracker. It's very interesting. It's kind of an odd mix of like districts. Our states, there's a lot going on. They all are pretty unique. So if you're interested in that. And then I want to just end with 3 kind of examples if you want to take them back. So this is the policy that Charleston wrote. That's focused on human judgment, around academic integrity, human focus on decision making, and then also about bias, content monitoring, and parental rights. We have the guidebook from Chicago Public Schools. You can find this. This is actually really interesting. If nothing else, get the latest version and go to the end of the document. This is the 6th version, and they have a change log. So if you're really interested in what's changed, because we often hear it's moving too quickly, but you can actually see all the changes, which are really great. And then the last one I want to share before I wrap up is this is a 1-page document that does amazing work for a KAC district outside of Chicago, Winnetka. It talks about how to really frame a teacher's use of generative AI through pedagogy, judgment, and human connection. So for example, student use of Gen AI must be supervised by the teacher and in line with scope and sequence. Grading, do not use Gen AI to grade student work or detect AI use. Student voice, know your student's writing. This helps get spot and appropriate use, and human-centered. Should not replace teacher-student interaction or personal feedback. Imagine how much good work this 1 page does. And so when we think about the final piece and you're thinking about the next steps, is that for us, wherever you are in the room, there are 2 critical needs. The first is going to be an infrastructure layer. Do you actually know what's happening in your district? Do you know what's happening in the sense of what tools are being used, how they're being used? Are there policies in place to support like productive use of these tools? And are you taking the time to create piloting and vetting and metrics-driven approaches? And then second thing, there has to be the human layer, and that is the center. The idea that we should know that AI literacy should be about informed decision-making, and that informed decision-making may be, I don't use generative AI. And what we see is also we want AI literacy training for all community members, the ability to start understanding the need for evaluation anytime generative AI is used. And then we also need leaders like you who are willing to establish that leadership from the front. Are you not just modeling, transparent and meaningful practices, but are you creating space in which people can actually have real conversations and create change? So I want to say thanks, everybody. It's really great. I was only a minute over. Thanks, everyone.